One arrest. That's all it took. They weren't locked away for years, but they didn't need to be. For these 10 LGBTQ+ stars, a single scandal, a single set of handcuffs, was enough to end everything. Most never served time, but their careers, their reputations, those were sentenced and never released. This is 10 LGBTQ+ Hollywood figures whose careers crumbled after arrest. The bars weren't always real, but the fall was. Jussie Smollett. When the spotlight turned cold. In early 2019, Jussie Smollett, a rising star from the hit series Empire, shocked the world when he reported a brutal hate-fueled attack in Chicago. He claimed that 2 masked men assaulted him, used racial and homophobic slurs, poured a chemical substance on him, and tied a rope around his neck. The public reacted with overwhelming support. As an openly gay black man, Smollett had become a symbol of progress in Hollywood, and now a victim of its ugliest realities. But the story quickly began to unravel. Investigators found inconsistencies in his account. 2 men, later identified as brothers and acquaintances of Smollett, confessed that the attack had been staged, allegedly orchestrated by Smollett himself to garner attention and boost his career. The backlash was immediate. Charges were filed for filing a false police report, dropped once, then reinstated. In December 2021, Smollett was found guilty of 5 felony counts. Though he served only a short sentence behind bars, the fallout was immense. He was dropped from Empire, and major projects vanished. Smollett's legacy transformed overnight, from a face of representation to a source of division. He continues to assert his innocence, but for many, the damage lies not just in the legal outcome, but in the breach of trust. What began as a moment of solidarity became one of Hollywood's most polarizing modern scandals. Kevin Spacey, the fall no one thought possible. Few downfalls in Hollywood history have been as dramatic and irreversible as that of Kevin Spacey. Once considered one of the greatest actors of his generation, with 2 Academy Awards and a starring role in Netflix's House of Cards, Spacey seemed untouchable. But in 2017, the image shattered. Actor Anthony Rapp came forward, alleging that Spacey had made an unwanted advance toward him in the 1980s, when Rapp was just 14 years old. The allegation shook the industry, but it was only the beginning. Dozens of men, many working in film, theater, and television, soon shared their own stories, painting a picture of abuse, intimidation, and long-standing silence. Spacey's response was as unexpected as it was controversial. Instead of denying the claims, he publicly came out as gay, an announcement that was widely condemned as a distraction from the allegations. The damage was swift. Netflix severed all ties, halting House of Cards and scrapping a planned film project. Studios followed suit, and Spacey's name quickly became radioactive. Legal battles followed. While many charges were dismissed due to lack of evidence or procedural issues, the court of public opinion had spoken. Spacey's attempts to return, through cryptic online videos and independent films, failed to spark interest or forgiveness. For many, the betrayal felt personal. His identity, once hidden, had been revealed not with pride, but as a shield, and it backfired spectacularly. This case wasn't just about one man's actions. It was a reckoning, about power, silence, and the cost of speaking too late. And just when we think Hollywood cannot be rocked any harder, the next story reminds us of some secrets come wrapped in laughter. Let's talk about the man behind Pee Wee Herman. Paul Reubens, the arrest that silenced a childhood icon. In 1991, Paul Reubens, the creator and star of the beloved Pee Wee Herman character, was arrested in Florida for an incident that turned public perception upside down. The charges, involving alleged misconduct at an adult theater, instantly destroyed the whimsical innocence that had defined his career. While no physical harm was involved, the media frenzy was unforgiving. Overnight, Pee-wee's Playhouse was pulled from television, appearances were canceled, and toy lines vanished from shelves. The very name that once brought laughter now caused discomfort. The arrest marked a sharp and public collapse of a brand carefully built around childlike wonder and quirky charm. Reubens disappeared from the spotlight. For a full decade, he remained mostly out of view, the industry unsure of how to handle his legacy, and fans split between outrage and sympathy. But in 2002, his name returned to headlines once more, this time over allegations involving media content discovered in his home. While the charges were later downgraded and no materials involved minors, the lingering association only worsened his reputation. Beneath the headlines, Reubens carried another secret. He was a gay man who never publicly came out during his lifetime. It was only after his passing in 2023 that a documentary revealed what many suspected, that behind the colorful suit and red bow tie was a man living with quiet pain and deep loneliness. His silence, whether about identity or past mistakes, became its own prison. Paul Reubens' story is not just about scandal. It is about the fragility of public image, the cruelty of media spectacle, and the toll of hiding your truth in a world that demands perfection. And if his story shocked you, the next will take us even deeper into betrayal. A case where the victim was underage and the punishment left no room for comeback. Brian Peck, a trusted insider who crossed the line. Before his name became a warning, Brian Peck was quietly embedded in the heart of children's television. He appeared in beloved shows like The Amanda Show and worked behind the scenes as a dialogue coach, often with young, aspiring actors. To many, he was just a quirky, familiar face. But in 2003, the trust he had built with studios and families came crashing down. Peck was arrested and charged with multiple counts involving the abuse of a minor, a teenage actor he had worked with closely. The case shocked not only the public, but the entertainment industry itself. These were not rumors. These were criminal charges, substantiated enough to lead to conviction. Despite his connections and industry history, Peck was sentenced to 16 months in prison. The details of the case were largely sealed, but what was publicly known was disturbing enough to send tremors through the networks that had employed him. His conviction marked a turning point in conversations around safety in children's programming. After his release, Peck tried to return, quietly, cautiously, to the industry. But word had already spread. Advocacy groups called for accountability, and any show or studio associated with him faced immediate backlash. His career was effectively over. What made his case especially painful for many was that Peck was reportedly part of the LGBTQ+ community. For an industry where queer visibility is still a fight, his actions became ammunition for critics who equate identity with danger, a false and damaging narrative that hurts far more than just one name. Brian Peck's fall is not just about one man's crime. It is about systemic failure. How predators can hide in plain sight when protected by familiarity and silence. And while his face may no longer appear on screen, his story is remembered as a warning. Not all monsters wear masks, and not all fallen stars come from the past. The next name is one who, for a time, was every teenage girl's crush, until a single arrest exposed the lie Hollywood helped him live. Tab Hunter, Hollywood's heartthrob, living on borrowed time. In the 1950s, Tab Hunter was the blueprint for the American leading man. Tall, blonde, square-jawed, and on the arm of every studio-approved starlet. But what fans saw on screen was a carefully curated illusion. Behind the scenes, Tab was a closeted gay man navigating a system that punished authenticity. And one misstep nearly cost him everything. That moment came in the early years of his fame, when he was quietly arrested at a private party targeted by police for being a gathering place for gay men. Though the charge was minor and swiftly erased from public record, the studio executives panicked. In a heartbeat, Hunter's career hung in the balance. He was instructed to keep silent, deny everything, and appear publicly with female co-stars to fix the optics. The message was clear. Your truth does not belong in this town. From that point on, Tab lived under a cloud of fear. Every date, every phone call, every glance risked exposure. He played the game, smiling, charming, but emotionally isolated. It was not until decades later, after his star had faded, that he came out publicly and told his story. His memoir revealed the quiet pain he endured for years, not just as a closeted man, but as a product sold to audiences who never really knew him. Though his arrest did not lead to prison, it led to something just as punishing: silence. The fear of being found out defined his choices, and the cost was a career cut short and a life lived half in shadow. Tab Hunter's fall was not from scandal. It was from a system that treated identity as liability. And speaking of legends forced into hiding, the next name is one the world applauded even in disgrace. A man knighted for his art, but arrested for being himself. John Gielgud, a knight, a scandal, and a standing ovation. In 1953, at the very height of his theatrical brilliance, Sir John Gielgud, one of Britain's most revered stage actors, was arrested in a public restroom and charged with importuning for immoral purposes. The phrase was a legal euphemism used to criminalize same-sex attraction. In that moment, the curtain did not just fall on his privacy, it nearly fell on his entire career. Gielgud had not spoken publicly about his sexuality, but in those days he did not have to. The simple fact of the arrest made headlines across the world. In post-war Britain, homosexuality was still illegal, and the media fed on the scandal with cruel delight. For an artist knighted by the crown, the shame was supposed to be unbearable. Studio offers were rescinded. Government voices debated whether his knighthood should be revoked. His entire life's work teetered on the edge of erasure. And yet what happened next stunned even his critics. Days after the incident, Gielgud returned to the stage. When he stepped into the spotlight, the audience rose, not to condemn him, but to applaud. It was a moment of quiet rebellion in a rigid society. He bowed with tears in his eyes and continued the performance. That ovation, some say, lasted longer than the play itself. Gielgud never directly addressed the arrest again, but he did not hide either. He let his work speak, and over time his artistry restored what the tabloids tried to take away. His story stands as a testament to the power of grace under fire and to the cost of merely existing in the wrong era. But if Gielgud was protected by fame, the next man was not. He was a Disney darling, until being gay and getting arrested cost him everything. Tommy Kirk, from Disney's Golden Boy to silent exile. Tommy Kirk was the all-American kid. With his bright eyes and charming smile, he became a staple of Disney's golden era, starring in classics like Old Yeller, The Shaggy Dog, and Swiss Family Robinson. But behind the scenes, Tommy harbored a secret that, in 1960s Hollywood, could end everything. He was gay. And unlike the fairy tales he starred in, there was no happy ending waiting once the truth surfaced. The unraveling began when Disney executives learned of his romantic involvement with another young man. The studio, fearing scandal, quietly severed ties. One day, Kirk was the future of the brand. The next, his name was erased from casting lists. He received no public condemnation, just silence. A professional death sentence issued behind closed doors. Left adrift, Kirk tried to stay afloat with roles in low-budget films, but the industry had already turned its back. To make matters worse, in 1964, Kirk was arrested for drug possession, a minor offense that carried major consequences when attached to someone already under scrutiny. The arrest sealed what Disney had started. Offers dried up, tabloids whispered, and a once celebrated teen idol disappeared from the mainstream. The combination of being gay and legally marked was too much for the conservative Hollywood machine to forgive. Years later, Kirk spoke openly about the pain of being cast aside for simply being himself. He lived modestly, never returning to the spotlight, but never expressing bitterness. His quiet strength, however, left a lasting impression on those who later followed. Tommy Kirk's fall was not caused by scandalous behavior or betrayal. It was caused by a system that punished people for love. And speaking of lost promise, the next actor's life was filled with talent and tragedy, until it all unraveled in a single, silent moment. Sal Mineo, Oscar glory, street-level obscurity. Sal Mineo was a prodigy. At just 17, he earned an Academy Award nomination for his haunting role as Plato in Rebel Without a Cause, becoming one of the youngest and most promising actors of his generation. His performance was layered, vulnerable, and quietly revolutionary, a portrayal many later read as coded queerness in a time when Hollywood demanded masculinity above all. But as Sal grew into adulthood, the praise turned to whispers, and the roles began to vanish. In an industry built on appearances, Mineo's refusal to conform became a silent rebellion. He never officially came out, but he lived openly among friends, dated men, and refused to deny who he was behind closed doors. The price? A steady decline into B-movies, canceled opportunities, and increasing financial strain. He tried to pivot toward directing and theater, but Hollywood had already made up its mind. The downward spiral reached a darker chapter when Mineo was arrested in the early 1970s on suspicion of drug possession. Though the charges were dropped, the arrest added fuel to a fire he had long fought to keep under control. His public image, once that of a bright-eyed teen idol, now carried the weight of scandal, queerness, and perceived instability. Studios no longer saw him as bankable. Audiences forgot. And the press painted him as a has-been with a troubled past. Yet through it all, Mineo never stopped trying. He returned to the stage, rehearsed new plays, and spoke about the pain of being ostracized not for failure but for identity. His story is one of heartbreak, not just for what he lost, but for how little it took for Hollywood to cast him aside. And if you thought his downfall was tragic, wait until you hear about a rising star from our own time. A man who had it all until one arrest shattered everything. Jonathan Majors, a meteor blazing, then falling. Just months before his arrest, Jonathan Majors was on every next big thing list in Hollywood. With critically acclaimed performances in The Last Black Man in San Francisco, Lovecraft Country, and a high-profile role as Kang in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he was positioned to lead the next era of blockbuster storytelling. But in March 2023, everything changed, and fast. Majors was arrested in New York following an alleged domestic dispute involving a former partner. The news broke with stunning speed. Within days, major studios pulled marketing campaigns, projects were paused, and Marvel, once his strongest backer, began re-evaluating his future in the franchise. Though Majors denied all allegations and his legal team presented counter-evidence, the industry response was swift and unforgiving. The situation became even murkier as public debate swirled around not just the case itself, but who Jonathan Majors was behind the scenes. Rumors began to surface, not only about past temperamental behavior on set, but also about his personal life. While he has never spoken publicly about his sexuality, whispers of possible relationships with both men and women sparked another layer of intrigue and scrutiny. In a media landscape quick to judge, speculation alone can be weaponized. Whether the case ends in conviction or exoneration, one thing is certain. Majors' career has already taken a massive hit. He was removed from key projects, endorsement deals vanished, and public trust fractured. It is a brutal reminder that in the digital age, perception can destroy even faster than fact. And as modern Hollywood reckons with these collapses, perhaps the most haunting case of all still belongs to a man from the silent era. A comedy legend whose scandal would become the template for every fall from grace that followed. Fatty Arbuckle, the first star Hollywood couldn't forgive. Long before the red carpets and paparazzi flashes of today, Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle was Hollywood royalty. In the silent film era of the 1910s and early 1920s, he was one of the highest-paid actors in the world, beloved for his comedic timing, expressive face, and groundbreaking work both in front of and behind the camera. But in 1921, everything collapsed in a single night, and Hollywood would never be the same. That year, Arbuckle hosted a lavish party at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco. Among the guests was a young actress named Virginia Rapp, who became gravely ill during the event and passed away days later. Rumors spread quickly. Some claimed Arbuckle had assaulted her, others said he crushed her by accident. Despite a lack of physical evidence and contradicting witness statements, the press, hungry for moral outrage, declared him guilty before a trial even began. He was tried 3 times. The first 2 trials ended in hung juries. At the third, he was acquitted, and the jury even issued a rare written apology, declaring him innocent without a shadow of a doubt. But it was too late. The scandal had already destroyed his reputation. His films were banned, studios terminated contracts, friends disappeared. He attempted to return to directing under a pseudonym, but he never reclaimed his former glory. Though Arbuckle's sexuality was never confirmed, many historians note that his name often appeared in the coded social circles of early Hollywood's queer underground. Whether true or rumor, it was another layer of discomfort for conservative audiences already convinced they had seen the worst. In truth, Arbuckle's greatest crime may have been being famous in an era unprepared to grant grace. His story set the precedent for what would follow. A star accused, a career demolished, and a legacy buried under headlines. From silent film to streaming platforms, from coded rumors to canceled contracts, every name we have explored echoes the cautionary tale of Fatty Arbuckle, the first to learn just how fast Hollywood builds and how brutally it forgets. Behind every scandal is a human story about fear, identity, and the cost of silence. If these stories move you, if you feel seen, heard, or simply awakened, we thank you. Your time, attention, and support keep these voices alive. Subscribe, share, and join us again, because at LGBTQ Vibes, the truth still matters. We are honored to have you here.